I have my good friend Mike Adams here, and he is the COO, I can say that, of Pure Maintenance,
Correct.
which is a mold mitigation company. And really, honestly, it helps a lot with health and everything, which when we're helping people buy a house, it's the biggest investment of their life, most of them. And we want to make sure the house is safe. And there's a lot of different things we check for, but we always recommend to check for mold. And I'll have people go, over in the desert, you don't need to check for mold. But you do.
You absolutely do.
Yes. And so tell us a little bit what happens when there is mold in the house. Why is that bad, and why do we want to mitigate for it?
I think one of the most important concepts that I stumbled onto years and years ago was oftentimes it's the cumulative effect of a bunch of different places that has mold. That cumulative effect of different types of mold even competing against each other in your indoor environment causes it to be very unhealthy. Once mold colonizes, it releases an enzyme. That enzyme breaks down the food source. The mold then consumes that food source and it off-gases a mycotoxin. Mycotoxins are incredibly dangerous neurologically, and mold is just very dangerous.
And people don't even realize sometimes that they're always having headaches or this. I had a client that couldn't think straight. She couldn't think straight, and it ended up being that she was exposed to a long-term mold, and it was actually going through her body and everything.
It can actually colonize in your gut, it can colonize in your lungs, it can colonize in your sinuses, and then you're creating mycotoxins within your own body even. And so it's not anything you want to mess around with.
No, and it's actually not good on real estate either. Like, it stigmatizes a property. You have to legally disclose if there's mold in a home. And so a lot of times agents hate it when they get the positive test on mold, because they think, oh, we have to pull all the sheetrock out. That's what we see, right? Demolition, like people pull out all the sheetrock and they do this, and they're in their hazmat suits and they tell you your house is toxic and everything. But one of the greatest things I found about you is you're the most effective we've found about killing mold. And then you do the least amount of damage to the home.
Yeah, it gets back to that cumulative effect concept.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have mold in your home, it could be from a leak or a flood or something from the past, or it could be just a cumulative effect. As homes get older, what I call mold load gets worse and worse, because the mold never dies. It's not like bacteria that's going to die off after a few days. Mold does not die. It may go dormant, but it's not going to die. So my tagline has always been, your mold will be worse tomorrow than it is today in your home.
So true. It reminds me of like when I see moss. Like I remember one time seeing moss and it was dried up, and I just poured a little water on it and immediately
it's crazy.
And grew. And that's how that same effect, right? Like it will look like that.
Yeah, and when mold gets stressed, it spores out because it's trying to survive its own species, right? So it's sensing that, man, I'm going to die if I don't do something. And so it sends spores out like crazy, right?
Oh my gosh.
And then those spores get to bounce around until they find some moisture, and then they colonize, and the whole thing starts over again. So that's why your house just keeps getting worse and worse. And it's the example I use to explain to people why, when you probably have customers that say, that smells like a grandma and grandpa house.
Yes, I have people say that all the time.
Yeah, my wife says I can't use that anymore now that we're grandma and grandpa. But that's what's going on, is you've got an elevated mold load in that home.
And you know what? That's true. I can smell it, and I sometimes get a headache and different things. And my clients tune into that.
Yeah.
So somebody has mold. How do you mitigate for it?
So we patented this process, I don't know, about 12, 13 years ago. We fill the entire home up with a vapor of hydrogen peroxide and acetic acid. We all know what hydrogen peroxide is. Acetic acid is just a precursor to vinegar, right?
Uh-huh.
So it's extremely safe, extremely effective, hospital-grade sterilant. The fog will get so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face while we're fogging, but it gets nothing wet. It leaves zero residue, breaks down to just oxygen. That will put your house back down to, I talked about the mold load, it'll put you back down to, okay, we're as good as when this house was brand new.
Really?
Yeah, and then we set a second setting on our machines that puts just trillions of positive charged nitrogen molecules on every surface. These nitrogen have a positive charge, and they have little carbon spikes on them. So when mold comes in the house again, instead of having the luxury of bouncing around until it finds moisture, it's attracted to that nitrogen molecule because mold has a negative charge, nitrogen is positively charged. It pulls itself over the spikes, lights the outer membrane, it just falls apart.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So you guys have this all over, but here locally as well. If somebody wants to get their house tested and mitigated, who do you recommend they call, or what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can actually just go on puremaintenance.com. Regardless of where you are in the country, you can scroll down to the bottom. There's a map, and you can click on your area and find the local licensee. If you want, just here locally in Utah, it's just 801-513-3364, and we can take care of you. We're actually in the UK, Canada, and Australia as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, thank you, Mike. This has been awesome to talk about mold. So if you guys want to get your house healthy, give Mike a call.
Thanks.